going to start with designing for location. So I'm going to introduce Emma McKillen. She is the AR UX designer at Niantic, and you can take it away, Emma.
Awesome. Thanks, Chanel. Alrighty. So I'm going to start us off with a pretty essential question to ask ourselves, which is, why is the experience in AR? How does it benefit from it? There's a lot of fantastic ways to exhibit content, but what is really special about augmented reality is the reality portion of it, how we can start to interlace digital content with our real world and learn how to engage with both simultaneously. However, we tend to focus more on how we are augmenting reality, how we create an overlay on top of our real worlds and inject digital content into these spaces. But what we really need to be asking ourselves is, how is the real world augmenting the virtual? This is especially true for location-based AR, where not only are real-world elements essential to the experience, but the location and the real-world context becomes even more prominent. Oops, there we go. So today I'm going to talk through 3 considerations to make when designing experiences for locations. And that's really the space, the user, and the social context. So kicking us off first with considering the space. Just as we would consider the context in which any other experience takes place, whether it's in a game, on a website, in a museum, or a storefront, the context in which AR content takes place matters just as much. Where the user is, what they're doing, and how the digital content is positioned all matters. This can really help us in determining what kind of experiences we want to make. Knowing the size of a location can help us decide how large of content we can place there and how much room we have to move around. And determining what kind of features exist there can help reveal how you want to compose your content. The sky, for instance, can make for a really great canvas to work off of if it's really visible. But if it's covered with trees, then having more content on the ground might be more appropriate. And lastly, look for ways to build contextual awareness, like in Peridot, where the ground becomes a mechanic, making the user really think about the space that they're playing within. If it's possible, using scans or map data can help reduce the ambiguity of a location, revealing some of the design opportunities that we previously mentioned, or even some challenges for an experience. For example, using the geospatial browser, you can see that the user needs to localize on the bench in this VPS experience. However, once you zoom out in that space, you can see that there's about 10 benches in that space, which is really an essential data point when you need to guide the user to that particular bench. It's also really essential to consider the environment when designing for AR. For instance, in these 2 mocks, the UI visibility can be vastly different depending on the conditions that the AR experience takes place in. Testing often and in different scenarios can help reveal if the experience becomes impacted by lighting, weather, or crowds. For instance, we once worked 6 months on a location-based experience in Seattle, Washington, and we tested quite often. However, it wasn't until we had our first sunny day for the middle of the year that we realized we had never considered shadows. We'd always been testing in Seattle, where it's pretty overcast most of the time. There we go. Additionally, experiences designed for the real world means considering dangers that might be present there as well. Make sure that the user stays aware of their surroundings and try to design experiences that won't put the user in danger in the first place. Look for areas that are large or might have natural boundaries that can help keep the user in a safe space. However, there are some design decisions that can help mitigate this as well. For instance, in this experience, we chose a really large area, which gave us enough space for player movement and also the digital content. However, because it is right next to a road, we decided to add an additional boundary line in the experience to notify and ensure that the user stays within a safe area. I would encourage you all to use the tools that we have available to build as much context around locations as possible. Increase the size of your VPS meshes by adding your own scans, or use the playback recording to get a sense of scale and position of objects from the user's perspective. Additionally, you can create your own playback recordings in different weather or lighting conditions to be able to ensure the strength of your design. And of course, test as often as you can off of the editor. You're building for the real world, and so you really have to test in it too. And so moving on to our next section, which is considering the user. When designing experiences for location, considering the user's time is really essential. They might be en route to a job or an errand, or be facing real-world obstacles like weather or crowds. And so try to make sure your experience is adaptable to these kind of challenges. If your experience is location-bound, meaning it requires a user to be physically present at a location, try to keep that experience relatively short, to maybe 2 or 3 minutes. If it's meant to be played on the move, like maybe catching a Pokemon, or is an ad that plays in an overarching experience, try to keep that even shorter, to 30 seconds. You can also consider how you can keep pieces of the experience fully remote, giving the user the agency to decide when and where they want to engage in that experience. Considering the user's time can also factor into what kind of movements your experience is demanding on the user. Crouching or holding the phone above your head or running around can all be super fatiguing after a while for a user. And so consider building in breaks to your experience or limiting certain kinds of movements where possible. Also consider the accessibility of that location or the movements that you're demanding from the user and how you might make this more able for everyone to enjoy. And the last section, consider the social context. They're super awkward, and some of us might find this meme here a little too relatable, but there are ways that we can reduce this social tension. I think a big part of social awkwardness comes from not knowing what the person is doing. If y'all look at the image on the left, you can see that 2 players are holding their phones up. One is connected to an external battery bank, and they're sliding their thumbs in little circles on the screen. It's pretty safe to assume that they're probably playing Pokemon Go. And this is because their actions are pretty recognizable. So thinking about what kind of gestures or even sounds your experience has can help communicate to others what that user is doing. Even better, if you can have the experience be played with friends or in groups, that can help significantly reduce some of the social tension as well. As designers, though, we can help foster social acceptability by just choosing the right places in the first place. With designing for place, factors such as the physical layout, landmarks, cultural significance, historical context, and social dynamics of that location should all be taken into account. Not only should we respect the places that we're in, but these spaces have impacts on our mindsets as well, making us more or less willing to engage in an experience. So that was a lot of content, but here are some key takeaways. The real world should augment the virtual. The exciting part about augmented reality is really the reality portion of it. So consider how that is impacting your experience. Context matters. Where the user is and what they're doing at that time impacts how willing and able they are to engage in that experience. Help the user feel safe, mitigate real-world risks, and try to reduce social awkwardness. And test often and on site. Building an experience for the real world means testing in it too. And know that this technology is really new, and we're all still figuring out how to use it and what the best practices for it are. So give yourselves more time than you'd think to explore the best ways to present your own experiences in the real world. And that's all for my side, and I'll pass on to Josh to talk about designing for the body. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. I definitely learn a lot from Emma whenever she speaks. So yeah, now that we've learned a bit about designing for the location, the where, It's also important to design for the who. So I'm going to talk a bit about designing for the body. Hi, everyone. My name is Josh. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an AR UX engineer at Niantic, and I mainly work on our web AR platform called Athwal. Maybe some of you in the chat use Athwal or are familiar. Everything runs on the web. And I work on a lot of our AR features. One of the sections I lead is human AR, and that's what I will be diving into today. I'm also going to start with a question, and this one is, why human-centered design? We hear a lot about this concept a lot. I know I did, especially if you're a designer or in the design industry. It's one of the first concepts I learned about, all about designing for user needs and for people in general. But I wanted to ask why? Why focus on this concept in the first place? You might think it's obvious. Well, duh, we need to design for humans because we're humans and we like products that are designed for humans. But I want to go a little bit deeper and ask, like, well, okay, why do we need to design for humans in the first place? Like, why doesn't everything just work perfectly? And the answer to that is that there is this huge interaction gap between humans and technology. Humans for a long time before technology just use their hands, their bodies, their senses to engage and interact with the world. You touch a cactus, it hurts your finger, and you learn that it's not safe to touch the cactus. Or you grab an apple, you bring it up to your mouth, and then you eat it. Very three-dimensional and embodied interactions. Now, when technology came out, like this computer, it doesn't have arms or legs or fingers to interact with you. It's confined to this 2D screen, and the only way to sort of interact with it, at least in the beginning, were keyboards and mouses. And you have this whole dimensional gap between how humans and technology interact with one another. And so what was the solution? Well, human-centered design came about, and UI UX has come a long way. It's become quite established discipline nowadays. You can see how the iPhone UI has evolved, and also sort of some different UI philosophies. And I just found this old style UI kit, which I thought was interesting. Point being, UI has gotten a lot better as we've understood how people interact better with technology, how we like to approach screens, and how to bridge this sort of interaction gap between the 2D and the 3D. I will say, though, I feel like eventually you do plateau at some point. There's only so many UI configurations you can do, or so many design patterns you can try out on a two-dimensional screen. Yet there's always still a third dimension missing in between humans and technology. Cool. That is until with the advent of new technology itself. So especially with AR and VR, where you're using more embodied interaction and you have the third dimension, I want to talk a bit about shifting your thinking from the user interface to the body interface. And what do I mean by that? Great question. What if we design technological interfaces in a way that utilize the human body to facilitate seamless and intuitive interactions with digital systems and devices? Food for thought, just some way to design with technology in this three-dimensional setting, focused on the body again. And to make this a little less abstract, I have two examples I'm going to talk about. First one, I'm going to talk about retail. Everyone loves retail, everyone loves shopping. I know I love shopping, but especially for clothes and for accessories and such, even before technology began, the most intuitive way to shop was to go into the store and to try on the bracelet, the dress, the shirt, make sure it fits right, make sure it looks right on you, make sure it matches your skin tone. And even with technology, I think a lot of us, including me, prefer going to the store and going to the fitting room to make sure that everything looks right, just because it can be hard to tell through the screen if it's actually a good fit. With technology, many of you may be used to just going online to Amazon, picking out a color and a size, or like choosing a watch like here on the right. But it's, unless you've bought it before, it's really hard to tell, well, how well it's going to fit on me, you know, if the color is really going to match my skin tone. With jewelry, like the watches, sometimes they'll have like a 3D model you can rotate around, but it's really hard to get a sense of scale and I guess tone match on your actual wrist until you actually get it. So how can we sort of combine the the interaction and the liveliness of in-person shopping with the accessibility and convenience of online shopping? And so what would designing for the body look like? This is what we've done at Eighth Wall so far at Niantic. These are some examples I'm going to talk about. It includes contacts and makeup try-on, earring try-on, and watch try-on. And this is a really short snippet of what could be possible with this mindset. So starting with makeup, if you've ever gone to Sephora or the makeup store and had to get the sample makeup to try on like eyeliner or eyeshadow or lipstick, you know how like inconvenient that can be. Like you have to put it on you and then you have to wipe it off and then you have to make sure you got a good look at it. But with AR makeup try on, you know, it allows you to have the convenience of doing it wherever you are and being able to always see it without having to put it on you with the I guess realism of trying on the actual makeup. And so you can test out the shape, how glossy it is, even the opacity of it, and sort of try on different combinations of makeup that people would like to test. This is, like I said, similar to trying on makeup in the store, but also without the cross-contamination or cleanup that you have to do. And you also can do like fun clown makeup with a color picker if you want. Thanks, Chanel. Next, okay, cool. I talked a little bit about the watch or the watch e-commerce experience, and with AR, you can actually put a watch on you now and actually see how metallic it is, what size it is, sort of see how it moves with you as you sort of rotate your wrist and arm, along with wrist and finger occlusion, meaning that your hands block the watch itself. It makes for a really realistic and really convenient way to see if you like the watch on you. This is like trying it on at the store, but without the hassle of like putting it on and off, cutting off circulation. I don't know if that happens, but yeah, it's just a lot easier and also a lot more convenient. Lastly, for this section, if you've ever tried on earrings, you know that it's also really inconvenient. You have to sort of like hold the earring to your ear and like turn your head at like a 45-degree angle so you can see the earring and the mirror, and like even then you have to like simulate like wiggling the earring to see like how it would look on your head. It's like a whole thing. And of course, when you're buying it online, you can't even like see how it looks next to your ear, which is even worse. And so by building out a earring try-on experience with real-time physics and also occlusion, it's really, yes, you know, new piercings are a headache. With the AR try-on, you can really see how it looks, and then also as you turn your head, it'll like react to your head physics. And it's, I think, a really great option and alternative to holding up the earring to your ear. Time check, doing okay. So next, I just want to talk about storytelling, which is very different from retail, but people love it just as much. I love stories. People love stories. I think humans love stories in general. Before technology, people used to gather in theaters and coliseums and anywhere they can, even just with their friends and family. You know, you told stories and performed stories, and maybe your parents read bedtime stories to you at night. I think they let us learn about the world and implant ourselves into the shoes of others. And in turn, we learn about ourselves more as well. Stories have come a long way with technology. You can see that CGI and VFX have made stories more immersive, more imaginative, more creative. Even we've made some interactive things like games, especially The Last of Us is a very story-driven game, and it lets you not only hear the story, it lets you as the viewer to engage with the story directly and to actually like become the player in the story. However, this is all still confined to a two-dimensional environment. And so what would happen if we made stories more immersive and more engaging by designing for the body in a XR mindset? This is what we've done at Niantic so far. Like I said, really small snippet. I think there's so much more you could do with this, but just some fun things we've done with the face, the ears, and also the hands. In terms of face, this is a fun little demo I made. You can try it out yourself, where you can morph your face into different sizes and shapes. And my favorite one is one where it like makes your eyes expand outwards and makes you look like a bug. It's really fun. It really reminds me of like magic mirrors that you find at like amusement parks. And I think this really allows you to turn into your favorite characters or creatures, and gives a really fantastical experience while still maintaining a sense of personalization and familiarity since you're using your actual face. And it's also kind of like just having your own special effects artist, which is really fun. Next, in terms of hand tracking, I think there's a lot of creative things you could do. I made a few demos of this thumb lighter, or I think you'll see in a minute, some Wolverine. But hands are one of the main interaction tools that we use to engage with the world. And so by augmenting it, we really expand the possibilities of objects, experiences, and ways we can engage with the creative world. And hands in particular let you become the character in stories itself. And so many VR experiences let you become a knight holding a sword, or you can be like the tooth fairy collecting teeth, or you could be like Iron Man shooting a laser. And I just want to leave everyone with this, just design for the body interface and think about designing in this new paradigm, kind of shifting from the user interface to the body interface and to, just the spatial interface in general. And yeah, I'm going to pass this off to Daiga now, who's going to talk about designing for the returning user.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daiga. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an AR UX designer at Niantic, and specifically, I work on Paradox. So, again, like everyone else started with a question. So I launched an AR experience. Like, okay, great. That's everyone's goal, right? Now what? What do I do now? So, I want you guys to kind of think about that while I play a little preview of what Peridot is, in case you guys have never seen Peridot. Oh, Chanel, is there a way to? Okay. Yeah, that was kind of one of our like YouTube commercial type things we made to give you kind of a little preview of Peridot. Okay, so what is Peridot? Peridot's Niantic's first AR first game. It's the first one that is, has to be played in AR. Unlike some of our other titles, every single Peridot is genetically unique and different. So kind of everyone's creatures is completely different, and you know, you have your one of a kind Peridot. And the goal of the game is to nurture your Peridot to grow them up into an adult, and then you want to hatch new Peridots and discover and collect all the new dots. There's different kinds of archetypes, categories of dots. Yeah, if you want to download, you can download it already. I think I lost control, Chanel. I'm not seeing like controls anymore.
Let me stop it and start it again. No problem. Okay, you wanna try it again?
I don't see the control panel anymore. Oh, huh? Yeah, I don't see the control panel anymore.
Okay, no worries. I'll move it for you.
Okay. So, a little bit about, you know, launch and after launch. So we actually got over 1 million downloads worldwide in under a month, which is a huge milestone for us. There was a lot of really strong positive impression from new users. A lot of people were like, "Wow, like I can see these real creatures or creatures in real life, and they seem real pretty much." And we have a really strong dedicated community. There's like different Discord communities, campfire communities, and there's a lot of people communicating on a day-to-day basis. But on the other hand, a lot of users understood how to play the game, but they weren't at least like start the game, how to like start the experience. But some people were like unsure how to like play it from a day-to-day basis, understand how to get to the end goal, which was like hatching. And a lot of people also were not wanted more to do with their dots. Like they love taking care of their dots, but they were like, I want to do more with them. I want to like have more games to play with them, more experiences. Well, why do I want more dots? You know, there was a lot of these like questions that users had regarding their Peridots. So next slide. Some of the challenges with Peridot is nurturing and hatching Peridots are not clear, straightforward goals for many users. I guess like, you know, like raising a pet even is challenging. It's not as straightforward. So when it becomes a game too, it's not always straightforward to everyone. It's an experience that's different from every single user. So it's really hard for users to just like quickly understand what they want to do with the game. And you know, we live in this digital age where our attention span is not so long, so people with short people have such short attention span, so it's hard for users to just be like, okay, let me spend a lot of time with this game right now. Some pros of using AR in Peridot is, you know, the AR does make the dots feel more real and alive. A lot of people feel like this is the most like immersive pet simulation game they've ever tried. So definitely AR is a strong benefit to a pet game. The fact that the dots interact with you and your environment. So the dots, you know, we're using semantic segmentation, so dots can hunt for like berries from bushes, you know, those kinds of like realistic experiences has added a lot of emotional value and connection for users. Some people have talked about how like, oh, this game has allowed them to cope with their loss of their pet. And there's a lot of like really touching stories that has came out. Some cons though with AR regarding Peridot is the AR does make it hard for us to curate a game or a story for users to follow, because the world we all live in is completely different. Everyone's rooms, everyone's neighborhoods, they're all different. So it's not really possible for us to curate like a story or like a game flow for users to follow. Everyone's experience is going to be different. Therefore, the onboarding becomes a lot more challenging and a lot more cooperation from the user, which my next point is that, you know, it requires users to physically go and explore, walk around, use that camera to like look at different things. And that's, you know, that's not really an experience that people are familiar with. A lot, most games, you know, kind of guide you with like a map to like go here, go there, do this, look at this, you know, but we can't really do that when everyone's environment is completely different. So next slide, please. Okay, so with all this, you know, we have a cool goal of like hatching paradots. Everyone's paradots are different. You can collect all these paradots, but how can we get users to get there? Like, how can we give more for users to do to help them explore the game and continue playing the game? And was our big challenge that we needed to solve after launching this game. So we recently, guess 2 weeks ago, yeah, almost exactly 2 weeks ago, launched this new feature. It's we launched this thing called Feral Dots. Blight and Dazzling, I guess, is like a three key words to this feature. So I can explain what this feature is. So the gameplay is essentially there's these feral dots that kind of are releasing like bad vibes to essentially your neighborhood. They're upset, they're agitated, and essentially they're creating blights to the world. And you with your peridot, you have to kind of clear that blight off of that peridot to get them happy in a positive peridot again. So by doing this, it's essentially kind of like a battle-like gameplay, but with more peridot-y positive context. So by doing that, we have a clear win-loss per session. Every user knows if they succeeded or lost, and there's also a new purpose in owning different dots. You need your dots to help your neighborhood. There's clearing blight allows for a shared map and shared experience and a clear goal with your neighborhood, your friends, your community to get this blight out of the world. So there's a clear thing you can do that has visual outcomes on a session by session basis of, you know, you're clearing this bad vibes out of your map. You're seeing these paradots become happy again. And lastly, there's benefit for both new users and current users. New users discover like, oh, this is what I do, and this is why I need to raise my paradots to an adult, because you know, the adult paradots are going to be more powerful in the game system. And all this is tied to the nurturing and hatching loop. So by clearing more blight and helping more feral dots, your peridot gains growth and it grows up, and you can hatch with these dots you've saved essentially. So next slide. So yeah, the AR interaction with this. So this gameplay is still an AR gameplay, and where it's by drawing circles around the peridot, you're kind of helping your peridot dazzle them, essentially like help send like good vibes to the peridot so that we're clearing the blight. This is a simple and repetitive interaction that resonates with users. You know, like simple interactions seem to resonate with AR games, honestly, for any kind. You can think about the Pokemon Go, Pokemon Ball Throw. It's so simple, it's repetitive, but there's, you know, a challenge to it. With the new Monster Hunter Now game, you know, the tap to attack, you're just kind of like rapidly tapping. Those are all like very repetitive experiences, but they do have the easiest interactions to get users to understand what's going on and learn, and you know, not be so overwhelmed, because AR is still overwhelming. And it's familiar, right? Like circling things is not so hard. And it's also a main game mechanic within the regular Peridot gameplay. So next slide. So the result was that, retention boosted. We got more users to come back and continue playing the game, as well as new users. Session lengths increased because there was more to do. And user sentiment has been pretty positive, especially with the active, like the vocal user community. Someone said we're the best team in Niantic, which was cool to see. And so down on the left, it was like a fan art that they made, like Blightbusters, Ghostbuster reference. Thought that was cute too. So yeah, it's been pretty positive so far. And our, kind of theory of giving users more to do and a session by session basis that has a clear goal did resonate with the users. And next slide. So now that we have, this gameplay, we did design the two gameplays a little bit different in terms of the user experience. With the nurturing loop, your dot can essentially be anywhere. It walks on its own, just like a regular pet. It's a dynamic AR gameplay. And you can also, double tap to call them. So it's a bit more of like a intuitive interaction that's more like based on how real life works, right? But then in the next gameplay, which is the dazzling gameplay with the blight and feral dots, what we really needed to consider was a lot more space. There's two paradots. The feral dot needs to be in the center of the space, but there also needs to be space in between the two dots. It's also an interaction where you kind of can't be walking because you're kind of, in a way battling. You're trying to circle around the dot, and if you're moving, and if your dot and their dot is moving, it's almost an impossible gameplay. So it's in a stationary gameplay. So for safety considerations, what we needed to do was add this recenter button where, if you need to move out of the way, like let's say you're crossing the street and you're like, you started the interaction waiting for the light to turn green. Well, you can still cross and then hit recenter and then you can still play. But if you're walking and, we don't want the users to walk and play, which is why, it's a stationary gameplay. And these both are safety considerations. With your Peridot, you want to walk with them on a day-to-day basis. So, we want them to walk in a natural way that's a heads up interaction. But if it's a more like focused interaction gameplay, we don't want the user to be walking and doing it, which is why it's more of a stationary gameplay. And these both have accessibility and safety considerations, kind of related to what Emma was talking about earlier too. So some main takeaways from what I talked about. One thing I think is AR is a really strong driver for initial user interest. Obviously, getting users is one of the hardest things, and AR is definitely like a really strong way to get users interested in your experiences. But like people do not stay because of the AR. AR is still just, a tool that we use. It's no different from anything else like AI, VR, map-based interactions, gameplay, social. It's still a tool within those. So why do users stay? It's never because it's AR. I mean, some people might stay, but for the most part, people don't stay just because it's AR. So what do we need to do is we need to create, games that or experiences that resonate with users. Users understand what they're trying to do and give them value still. AR can't just be the single value. Still need to create value for the users. So yeah, simple, repeatable, easy to learn interactions and clear goals are really key things that you should consider when designing a successful AR experience. And lastly, oh, sorry, accessibility and safety is always important. And they differ depending on what the situation of the game is. Some games, some interactions should, be staying in screen so that the user can play while they're walking around safely. But others, we don't want users to be walking and playing. So different use cases for different situations. And yeah, those were kind of our takeaway from designing Peridot, releasing it, and showing it to the world and seeing how the world reacts. And yeah, another thing I wanted to say is there's no shame in pivoting your product after launch. We pivoted majorly, and there's no shame in that. Users love change. So yeah. So to summarize what we talked about today, we talked about Emma talked about designing for locations, different scenarios, different situations, different environments. Josh talked about the body, both hand, face, and different kinds of physical and body interaction. I thought that was such a VI, was such a new term for me, but that is totally relevant, and I think that should be a more commonly used word. And then designing for returning users, with Peridot and users coming back. How do we get them continue to be fascinated with our amazing AR and games? So yeah, I'll send it back to Chanel.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, Emma, Josh, and Daiga, taking us through kind of all the different considerations when designing for user-centric experiences. And we have time for questions, and our team has been busy answering some questions asynchronously in the Zoom Q&A, but if you have other questions, make sure that you are using the Zoom Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. You can upvote the questions you want answered, and we have some questions that we can get started on soon. And I actually want to highlight some of the questions that have already been answered, because even though we typed a reply, I think hearing some of our presenters actually answer these questions and allow the broader audience to hear the answer will be super important. So I'm actually going to highlight a question that PatCat asked, and Emma already answered about. Does the battery life of devices affect how you design your UX in any way? And then I'm going to let Emma kind of summarize her answer.
Yeah, it's a pretty big question, and it really depends on the experience you're building. So it's kind of hard to give like a one-off answer, but it does. Keeping your experience relatively short, especially if it's on the go, like if they're in public traveling and they're meant to try out an AR experience, it's going to be a bummer if you use up all the battery of your device and then you still have to use your phone to use public transportation and whatnot, and you can't because you used up all your battery. So keeping things short, snappy. There's also different considerations to take in depending on the technology that you're using and the approach that you use. VPS, for instance, with localization, you could localize once, you could localize continually. Those have very, very different flows that you'll need to guide the user through, but it does have a different outcome in terms of battery drain. That would be another example. If anyone else, I don't know how it is on the 8th wall side of things, but from Lightship, yeah, there's a lot of different factors that can contribute to battery drain.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. I thought it was really important that we highlighted that. And then we had a few people ask, just because, we featured both Lightship experiences as well as 8th wall experiences in today's presentation. And some people were asking, can they integrate seamlessly? And we were able to answer some of that in the Zoom Q&A asynchronously, but I kind of just wanted to clarify that right now they can't be mixed at the moment, and there isn't always a one-for-one comparison comparison for Lightship ARDK or eighth wall, but there are a lot of them, and we're certainly trying to make sure that we are able to provide people with the features that they see in Lightship available on eighth wall as well. So just make sure that you check out lightship.dev or eighthwall.com to kind of explore more about the feature set and understand which works best for your experience. But thanks for that question. And then let's see, another question that I thought was really interesting. We can actually start with a new question now. I'm going to pitch this off to Josh. Jamie asked, has the watch or ring try-on in eighth wall, was a watch or ring try-on in eighth wall or Lightship? Can you clarify? And is it possible to occlude fingers and wrists in Lightship yet? If you know, I know you're not on the Lightship side. And can people do semantic channels with fine details of the fingers and hands? Maybe speak for the Lightship side right now, and then I can share some experimental documentation from the Lightship side.
Yeah, I can talk on eighth wall and then let someone else fill in for Lightship. So it's, yeah, hand tracking was all on eighth wall, at least the ones I showed off. And we're not using skin segmentation at all. It's our proprietary like hand tracking machine learning model that we're running frame by frame that tracks like the rotation, the translation. Yeah, I guess those are the two axes. But yeah, we track 36 attachment points on the fingers, which include all of your joints and all of your bones. This allows you to create custom hand rigs or like map out any like if you bend your fingers or like where your nails are. And we actually give you a dynamic hand mesh per hand. So you build the application once and it scales up to whatever hand size, whether it's like a baby or like Michael Jordan. Like it's gonna be the same relative experience. In terms of Lightship, if someone knows if you have hand tracking on Lightship, I'm not sure if that's supported.
Yeah, with 2.x, we had hand tracking as an experimental feature, and I just asked Jesus to drop some documentation to that. It's not currently available for 3.0, but I know our team is looking into that, and just keep looking at our website for any product updates. But thanks for answering that question, Josh. And let's go into another question. So let's see, there's lots of great questions here. I'm going to start off with a question from Jonathan Martin, and I think I will let maybe Emma answer this, and then Daiga and Josh, you can piggyback on top of it after. But Emma, have you found that different audience demographics typically different devices? Do you take that into account when designing, whether if you're looking at audience demographic as well as different devices?
Yeah, we do take that into consideration. Also in global experiences, taking into account what devices might be in different areas. So it really depends on where and who you want to target. But generally, we do try to enable as many people as possible to use the AR experience. And so whether that be a sliding scale of features where you have more of a basic experience to accommodate lower end devices, or enable some new features that can accommodate the newer devices and what they can afford. So it is really dependent on you and what you want to have, but we personally do try to be as accommodating as possible.
Awesome.
Especially with LiDAR.
No, for sure. Daiga or Josh, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of the game design for Peridot, we tried to not focus too much on text and have more like intuitive fit to first-time user experiences where we use like more like finger guides and stuff so that, you know, anyone can understand. One cool fact is Alicia on this call, her daughter was very young, was able to figure out how to play Peridot without her teaching anything at all. So hey, if a little baby can figure it out, then no one has an excuse. I love bringing that point up. So
And then on the AFL side, I would say more than just designing experiences for everyone, I think we design platforms for everyone. And so we pride ourselves that we support, I think, like 5 to 6 billion devices worldwide. So from old iPhones to the newest Android to the newest headset, you build your app once and you deploy it all. And it's, I think, really powerful and something we keep in mind, and we have a device drawer that we test like all the different devices for each release to ensure that performance and the experiences run as expected.
Awesome, great. Thank you for answering that. And then I'm going to let Daiga answer this next question. How did you go about finding out how to drive people to return to the game? Discovery process or research process?
A lot of it had to do with, some communication with our community. Our team's been very adamant about talking to the community. We have a representative on our team that actively communicates with them and understands. We definitely look at a lot of metrics. Our data analyst looks at the metrics on a day-to-day basis and figures out what the trends are. And yeah, also just kind of understanding from our end too about like what are the gaps with our game? How do we get users to get to the end goal, because we strongly believe in our end goal. And kind of, I think the biggest process is believing in your end goal and figuring out, okay, the user got into the game, good. How do we get the user to continue to get to that end goal and continue on that journey? And figure, just trying to understand why might a user, how do we get users to continue to get interested is like, I think the biggest takeaway is, yeah, if you really believe in your goal, then like, just figuring out how to guide them to there is really important to understand.
Awesome. Thank you, Daiga. And then we're going to take a last question and then start wrapping it up. So I'm going to let Emma answer this question, specifically around VPS. Patrick was curious about, do we have any common design patterns or examples to help relocalize users or help them find activated VPS content?
Yes, we are coming out with external developer samples that will help you with just this. And so I believe it'll be coming out pretty soon, and you can reference this directly for your project. I will say we're constantly finding best practices with this. It's a really big question. And so we'll be coming out with more samples, more ideas in the future, but keep an eye out for this developer sample. Hopefully it will help you.
Awesome, thank you. And there are lots of questions that haven't been answered, so we'll love if you can direct some of the questions to our Lightship Discord community, or if they're more specific about AFWA or AFWA Developer Slack. I'll drop the links in the chat in a little bit, but just some gentle reminders as we wrap up. Let me just share my screen now, is that some of you are curious about the Lightship Challenge. We still have several weeks in the challenge, and all submissions are due December 4th. I'm going to show a really quick promo video if you haven't seen it already, to get you kind of excited for the challenge.
We're dancing in the bright lights. We're dancing in the bright lights. We're dancing in the bright lights.
Awesome. Love that video. You can see that we want to see different use cases of immersive learning, health and wellness, as well as lifestyle and entertainment apps. So hopefully today's conversation has helped you kind of think about how you want to design the user experience for your Lightship Challenge projects.
We're dancing.
Again, we have the challenges channel in Discord. If you want to talk more or team form and meet other people or bounce ideas off, please make sure you check that out in our Discord server. I already dropped all the links to our lightship.dev, documentation, our GitHub, as well as Discord. I'll also drop the link to 8th Wall Slack as well. But let's take a really quick group photo. Love doing this. So if you can turn your cameras on if you like to, or use a Zoom avatar, that works as well. So okay, awesome. I see everyone turning their cameras on. Thank you, thank you. You look beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna count down, and I might have to do a few ones. Okay, 3, 2, 1, cheers. Okay, let's do one more just in case. Not everyone looks great. 3, 2, 1, cheers. Awesome. And then one last thing. We want to continue bringing you better events, and we are able to do that by getting your feedback. Just like Daiga said, we listen to our community and we want to listen to you as well. So if you could take your phones out and scan the QR code, or check the chat and complete our brief survey, it'll be super helpful. But thank you so much to every one of our presenters, Emma, Josh, Daiga, as well as Alicia on the design leadership team, as well as Herberto and Jesus, who was helping out with the Q&A. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.